shooting side of the road.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbria DeÁnne, and welcome to the Story Beyond My Songs Viewer's Choice Update, where each week I shine a spotlight and tell you the full stories on the most viewed legacy shorts that touched your hearts, sparked your memories, and got the most love from you, the viewers. This week, your views chose powerful tributes to four unforgettable icons of soul: Rick James, The Funk, The Fall, The Final Days; Louis Armstrong, the man who blew the world a kiss; George Duke, the maestro of funk and jazz; and Princess Purple Rain, 24 weeks at #1. These are your choices. These are your picks. So if you haven't already done so, please make sure you subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I upload content. And without further ado, let's get into the moments that made last week so special.
She's a very kinky girl, the kind you don't take home to mama.
On August 6, 2004, the world lost a legend. Rick James, the architect of punk funk, the man behind Super Freak, Give It To Me Baby, and Mary Jane, passed away at just 56 years old. His cause of death? Pulmonary failure and cardiac failure, with traces of multiple drugs in his system. The official report called it natural causes, but his life had been anything but natural. He was outrageous, he was raw, he was talented beyond measure, and he was troubled to the core. Born James Ambrose Johnson Jr. in Buffalo, New York in 1948, Rick James was a rebel from the beginning. After enlisting in the Navy Reserve to avoid the draft, he deserted and fled to Toronto. That's where he met Neil Young and formed a band called the Mynah Birds, which was signed to Motown in 1966, until military authorities caught up with him and sentenced him to jail. That twist of fate sent him west to California, where he mixed rock, funk, soul, and sexual energy into a sound that couldn't be ignored. By the late 70s and early 80s, Rick James had become the voice of funk rebellion. Albums like Street Songs turned him into a crossover superstar. But with the fame came excess, and with the excess came demons. Then came August 2nd, 1991, just 13 years before his passing, almost to the day. Rick James was arrested on charges of SA and torture. Prosecutors alleged he and his girlfriend had held a woman hostage for days, burned her with a crack pipe, and SA'd her repeatedly. A second woman came forward soon after with similar allegations. James was convicted and sentenced to more than 5 years in prison. He served 2 before being released in 1996. By then, the industry had moved on, but Rick still had something to say. He made a late 90s comeback through comedy, playing exaggerated versions of himself on shows like Martin and The Chris Rock Show. But it was Dave Chappelle's iconic "I'm Rick James, bitch" sketch that reintroduced him to a whole new generation. Acting wasn't new to Rick James. He had made guest appearances on sitcoms and TV specials throughout the 80s and 90s, often parodying his wild public persona, a persona that was in many ways painfully real. Rick James once said, "Whether you're rich or poor, life's still cold-blooded." And he never lied. He spoke from experience. The fame didn't shield him from pain, addiction, prison, or regret. And even after the lights dimmed, Rick James carried the weight of everything that made him and nearly broke him. But his music never stopped. From hip-hop samples to funk throwbacks, from pop radio to party playlists, Rick James is still everywhere. Rick James was a super freak, a tortured genius, a visionary, and a cautionary tale. He didn't fake the funk. He was the funk. And today, on the anniversary of his passing, we honor not just the icon he became, but the man behind the madness. Rest in heavenly peace, Rick James. The funk never dies, but sometimes even legends burn out before they fade away.
Stars shining bright above you.
Today, August 4th, we celebrate the man whose horn lifted spirits, whose voice warmed hearts, and whose legacy became the heartbeat of jazz. Born in 1901 in New Orleans, Louisiana, he was affectionately known as Satchmo or Pops, and was destined to shape the sound of a generation and generations to come. Today, we honor Louis Armstrong on his heavenly birthday. He came from humble beginnings in a rough neighborhood known as the Battlefield. At a young age, he was arrested for firing a pistol on New Year's Eve and sent to colored waifs' home for boys, where fate placed a trumpet in his hands. That instrument would become his passport to immortality. With a tone like no other and improvisation that could make time stand still, Armstrong transformed jazz from ensemble-based ragtime into a soloist's playground, pioneering scat singing and taking vocal phrasing to brand new heights. In 1964, Armstrong's Hello Dolly dethroned the Beatles from the #1 spot on the Billboard charts, a feat many thought impossible during the British invasion. At 62 years old, he became the oldest artist ever to reach #1 on the Hot 100. So it's never too late. And just 4 years later, he gave the world a gift that transcended race, genre, and time. What a wonderful world.
What a wonderful world.
Released during the turbulence of the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights era, What a Wonderful World was Armstrong's quiet protest, a reminder that even in the darkest times, beauty remains if we choose to see it. His raspy voice filled with gravel and gold didn't just sing, it testified. He reminded us that life could still be wonderful. Armstrong collaborated with legends like Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Bing Crosby, Bessie Smith, and Duke Ellington. But his greatest duet was with the human spirit. His laugh, his cheeks, his eyes, all were instruments of joy. He didn't just play music, he became music. Louis Armstrong passed away on July 6, 1971, just 1 month before his 70th birthday. But he left behind more than just records. He left behind reverence. Reverence for artistry, for perseverance, for humanity. Louis Armstrong once said, "What we play is life." So today, we honor not just his birthday, but his rebirth into the hearts of everyone who ever tapped their foot, wiped a tear, or smiled to the sound of his horn. Happy heavenly birthday, Pops. Your music still fills the air and reminds us all what a wonderful world this truly is. On August 5th, 2013, the music world went silent for a moment as we lost a sonic architect, one of the true masters of jazz, funk, soul, and fusion. He passed away at the age of 67 from chronic lymphocytic leukemia. But what he left behind? That will never die. Today we honor the great George Duke on the anniversary of his passing. Born in San Rafael, California in 1946, George Duke's journey began with a spark from Duke Ellington himself. After seeing Ellington live at just 4 years old, young George told his mother, "Mama, I want to play piano." And the rest, as they say, is music history. Duke's fingers danced across genres, blurring lines and breaking barriers, from the experimental genius of Frank Zappa to the soul-deep grooves of Stanley Clarke. To his own records like Reach For It and Brazilian Love Affair, George wasn't just playing music. He was building bridges between jazz, funk, R&B, and global rhythms. Behind the scenes, Duke was a producer's producer, crafting hits for legends. He shaped the sounds of the 80s and 90s, touching everything from pop ballads to gospel funk. When George Duke was in the room, the music elevated, because he saw music not just as entertainment, but as healing. George once said, "Artists have always been the reflection of society, and in many ways a healing part of whatever is wrong. I don't see enough of it today." Even now, that quote feels urgent, like a chord waiting to be resolved. He challenged us as musicians and listeners to go deeper, to feel more, to heal through harmony. Though he's no longer physically with us, George Duke lives in every keyboard run, every funky bass line, and every artist brave enough to blend styles without apology. His sound was sophisticated but soulful, technical yet tender, and always, always honest. On this anniversary of his passing, we say thank you, George. Thank you for the music, thank you for the magic, and for reminding us that even in the funkiest groove, there can be profound truth.
I never meant to cause you any sorrow. I never meant to cause you any pain.
August 4th, 1984, the music world would never be the same. That was the day Prince's Purple Rain album hit number 1 on the Billboard charts, and then it stayed there. Not for a week, not for a month, but for 24 consecutive weeks. Purple Rain wasn't just an album, it was part of a triple strike: a record, a movie, and a tour that catapulted Prince from rising star to cultural icon. The album sold over 25 million copies worldwide, won 2 Grammy Awards, and even took home an Oscar for Best Original Song Score. But numbers alone didn't explain why Purple Rain became legendary. At the heart of it all was the title track, Purple Rain. It wasn't a conventional love song. It wasn't purely a rock anthem. And it wasn't strictly R&B. It was all of that, and something deeper. Prince once said Purple Rain was about the end of the world and being with the one you love in that final moment, wrapped in forgiveness, faith, and connection. The purple symbolized a sky at day's end, when red and blue merge into something beautiful, mysterious, and almost spiritual. The slow build, the pleading in his voice, the guitar solo that felt like a cry from the soul. It was raw emotion turned into sound. For fans, Purple Rain became more than music. It became a healing space, a place to grieve, to dream, to celebrate love and loss at the same time. For 24 weeks, the world stayed under Prince's reign. Radio stations played him daily, movie theaters filled with people seeing Purple Rain over and over. The tour sold out around the globe. And Prince? He didn't just perform songs, he delivered spiritual experiences. Decades later, Purple Rain still stops people in their tracks. It's played at weddings, funerals, protests, and celebrations. Because at its core, it's about unity. It's about love that survives the storm. Prince left us in 2016, but the rain, it never stopped falling. We're still laughing, we're still crying, still dreaming in the purple rain. And there you have it, folks. Last week's most loved stories now told in full for you to relive, remember, and cherish. If you enjoyed these moments, don't forget you can catch my weekly shorts right here on Barbria DeÁnne to vote with your views on next week's picks. And for deeper dives and full stories, make sure you subscribe to the Story Beyond My Song channel or become a member of this channel to view upcoming stories and classic songs where the music lives on in more than just a memory. And please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share for more stories beyond the legends that have shaped our lives. Until next time, keep the music alive by checking out this next video. Bye.